focusing on this major we'll be focusing on this major essay applications the past 5 to 6 weeks. So today we are going to be focusing on US MSc and PhD application. Very interesting. We're going to learn how to write winning MSc and PhD applications in the US. We would have our scholar teach us the best practices to maximize our applications for US MSc and PhD applications. So I want us to lay expectations up in our heart and be sure that those expectations will be exceeded. For those of us that have been joining the call, we've been having a wonderful time. Sometimes we don't even want to leave the call because we just want to keep learning and learning. And this is another time where we would also learn from our scholar this evening or afternoon or morning for wherever you are joining us from. So because we do not have much time, we are going to delve right into the session. And I just want to confirm if our speaker is on the call.
Yes, he is. Thank you, Damilola. Thank you for introducing the session. Hi, Peter. Confirm you can hear me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martins. Okay, so sorry, before Mr. Peter goes ahead.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'll be reading his bio. So Peter Kayode Oyefolu is a solution-focused individual with 3+ years of experience in assisting and overseeing research projects. He displays exceptional leadership, team collaboration, and technical competencies, and he is currently researching solutions to adeno-associated virus gene therapy, downstream bioprocessing. Oh my God. He has 7 publications, he has 122 citations, and his H-index is 4. He is a fellow at the National Institute of the General Medical Sciences. He is the president, the Black Graduate Student Association at RPI. He won the Scholar of the Year Award, the National Society of Black Engineers at RPI, and is a graduate fellow at Howard Insaman Fellowship at RPI. When he was doing his undergraduate study, he won the Regional Chemical Engineering Quiz organized by NSHE Edo Delta branch, and he also won the UNIBEN Most Influential Student. So we have a powerhouse in our midst this evening, and we can be sure to get something tangible. We can be sure to expect that we can be sure to have our expectations exceeded. So thank you for joining us today, Peter. Thank you very much for taking out time of your busy schedule to give us ideas, to share with us wisdom for our US MSc and PhD applications. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview of me. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. First, before I even go into my session, first let me share my screen. Please confirm that you can see my slides. Can you?
Yes, it is up now. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, first, thanks a lot to the organizers, especially Martins. I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I think I've heard you guys talking about like you have been you guys have been running this for this year almost like 6 weeks ago. That's a lot of time and effort. And for those who are currently in the session, I want you to believe, I feel you already know that you're in the right hands. And you should also have the sense to give back when you are done with this process and you peradventure get, I believe you should definitely get the fellowships you desire or the scholarship you desire. I haven't told you this, Martin. So one of my mentee, she's registered for your session last year after I had this kind of similar session, and then you shared the link with me. And currently, she will be resuming at University of Strathclyde I think Strathclyde for masters. She won the Chevrolet scholarship.
Oh,
And
wow.
to you guys training.
Wow, that's amazing. What's her name?
We can discuss that offline.
Okay, that's fine. Congratulations to her. That's quite interesting to find out.
Yeah, sure. So, for those who are also here, people have gone through this kind of sessions, this boot camp, and they can testify of how much impact it has made in their academic pursuits. So I appreciate that. And I also want you to have that sense of commitment in the sense that when you're getting those goals, even if I presume it's gonna be like free of charge, I don't know, but even if maybe you're doing fine at any aspect of your life, just make sure to always give back. It can be through organizing sessions for subsequent applicants or maybe through donations. Anything works. So thank you so much. I really appreciate what you guys are doing with Global Wings. Okay. Yeah, let me go straight to my session. I mean, why I had to do that was because people don't really understand the magnitude of efforts that go into this preparation. Because whenever you are in the US or you are in the UK, there are so many demands for your time and attention, and for you to create time for this kind of sessions, 6 weeks. Wow, that means you are really generous in art. So it's very important to emphasize that. Okay. Yeah, so again, my name is Peter Oyefolu. I'm a PhD candidate in the Chemical and Biological Engineering Department. My work focuses on protein purification and virus bioseparations. She was trying to mention a particular virus, adeno-associated virus, used for gene therapy applications. And currently at RPI, which is America's oldest and one of the world's most renowned engineering universities, the first polytechnic in the US. So for the sake of context, because I know I am also from Nigeria, where polytechnic is considered as like a second tier university. In the US, polytechnics is from the concept of science and engineering focused schools, right? So we don't have law school in my school. We don't have all those. We have some finance school and the likes, but uh, we are kind of very heavy in the science and engineering aspects. Okay, and I happen to be an IGMS fellow. Okay, that's a little bit about me. Let's just go straight to the details. So I'll be presenting some things that I presented in the last edition, but with different perception, with different concept, because I'm sure many of you have heard a lot of stuff about graphical applications, and I'm sure some of the things I'll be saying are things you have heard, perhaps during the 6 weeks of this training so far. But if you're just joining the session for the first time, it's also a good way to ensure that we are all starting from a zero baseline, right? To ensure that you have every information you need for your grasp application. Okay, sorry, please let's try to mute our mics.
Yeah, I'm going to
Okay,
everyone else now. Thanks.
thank you. Yeah, okay, so I'll just need to talk a little bit about different academic pathway, just in case you're in different phase of your life. So for some, they have like they just finished their undergrad, maybe they're currently serving or stuff like that, and they can decide to go for a master's degree, or go for a PhD or go for jobs. There are different ways, and depending on the country you're applying to, your possibilities varies. For example, if you are applying to the Europe countries and UK, European countries and UK, most times your pathway, as far as academic is concerned, is from undergrad. That is, after your bachelor's, you get a master's degree, and after you get a master's degree, you can now pursue a PhD degree, right? So typically, your master's degree is between 18 months, or let's say 2 years, or in some rare cases, maybe like 1 year. Some people do 1 year master, some 2 years, some 18 months. And then after you do that, then you go for your PhD, which is typically 3 years minimum if you have your master's, right? And then If you were able to defend on time, that's 3 years, but if not, 4 years, 5 years, as the case may be. And then, but in the US, in the United States of America, the pathway seems to be very different in the sense that you could actually jump from an undergrad to a PhD, right? That is, you have a bachelor's degree and then you shorten the shot for a PhD direct without doing a master's. Now, what's the difference? The difference is just that you are shooting directly for a PhD. However, in terms of the time frame, you are still in the same category with the Europeans. Because let's say you spend 2 years for your master's, the minimum you can do for your PhD is 4 years. But some schools even like insist that you do 5 years. So altogether, that's like for European, that's 2 plus minimum of 3, that's 5 years from undergrad to PhD. But in the US, you can do straight 4 years or 5 years. So meaning that in between, you can decide to get your master's if you want, and you can decide not to get it, just go from bachelor's to a PhD. Why am I explaining that is that you might be wondering, can I apply for a PhD? Does it make sense? Without having a master's, yes, you can apply for a PhD directly if you are shooting for US. Because I believe this session is for the US applicants, I would strongly recommend you apply for a PhD direct if you don't have a master's or if you're just a bachelor degree holder. Now, why PhD direct is because, I mean, you can do masters if you want to, but just because, the PhD comes with a lot of funding and you are spending more time in the school in exchange for your service, and your service can come in different perspective, which I'll explain later. But the bottom line is that PhD comes with a lot of funding. In fact, if you don't need to apply for funding if you are applying to a PhD program, because automatically, as far as US is concerned, you get a fully funded PhD. Or if it's not going to be fully funded, you'll be told in your offer letter that it is not fully funded PhD program. But what I'm trying to say is that you do not have to separately apply for funding if you're applying for a PhD. Like, it comes together. Right. So just take note of that. Whenever you're sending those application packets, don't say, oh, please, do you guys have funding in your lab? So, or do you have funding in your school so that I can be fully funded? No, just apply to the PhD program and then you get the funding. And similar things for masters, but just that the fundings are really kind of limited for master's degree program. If you're lucky, you get some. Okay, that's it. A little bit of context into different kind of grad school, because I know not all of you might be interested in PhD. So when we say graduate school or graduate degree, we have different types. We have the one for specifically for academic people, and then we have those that are for like professional degrees. I'm sure you have seen these professional degrees like MD, MBA, MPH, MFA, JD, and MED, and you're wondering, what's the difference? The difference is that for a graduate degree, most times your bachelor's, certification must have some similarities to whatever you want to do at the PhD level. So, for example, if your bachelor's is in chemistry, you can do a PhD in chemical engineering because it's still kind of similar, or PhD in civil or PhD in biophysics, as far as you're still in the science field or in the engineering field, right? But you cannot do it if you have a bachelor's in chemical engineering, for example. You cannot do a PhD in law, right? Because that's very adjacent, not adjacent. That's like kind of opposite spectrum. You're not in the science phase. You're not in like in the humanities and arts kind of space. But for a professional degree, you can cross the boundaries. Like all that matters is having a bachelor in anything does not really matter. Whether it's bachelor in chemistry or bachelor in science, in bachelor in arts, like you can shoot your shot for Doctor of Medicine, MBA, MPH, MFA, JD, and all those MED. Reason being that they're much more targeted to professional degree. In the sense that maybe you are kind of pursuing that career path, and then you take those trainings in that respect. All that being said, most schools, offer them simultaneously. Some schools now offer both graduate degree and professional degree. And some institutes don't offer both. Maybe they can offer just the professional degree over the other. But just know that there are different options for you, not just MSc and not just PhD. You can go any other way. Okay. Yeah, so why aim for scholarships? Because I don't recommend you, and I'm sure you joining this session is not because you want to apply to a PhD and use your money to fund it. Even if your dad is, the richest man in Africa, I would not recommend you shooting your shot to the US, and then you want your parents to fund it, right? Because it's very expensive. For example, my school's tuition just for a year, like the cost of living and everything, it, everything is around like $2,000, $2,300. And if you convert that to Naira, that's to Nigerian Naira, that would be some millions, right? And then that's just 1 year. Imagine you have to do that for like 4 or 5 years, right? Begin to do that calculation here, but don't get depressed by doing that. So it's very important that you seek scholarships. Oh, okay, let's now assume that you are from a very wealthy family, right? Um, yeah, and you want to self-sponsor your self-fund your PhD or self-fund your master's, which is good, but it also plays a role in when it comes to your visa interview, especially with US. If you're not fully funded, your chances of acceptance is kind of slim. Even with fully funded scholarships, if people's chances of visa acceptance is also slim, especially with this new administration. Um, yeah, so okay, why scholarship also is that it gives you access to top tier education. Please believe me when I say that you are good, like you are smart, you can compete on the global scale. Don't zero yourself out of the entire population. I know people like just assume, oh, I finished from this school, can I really shoot my shot for Harvard or those Ivy League kind of schools? Yes, you can. It's better to try, give it a try. I mean, if you don't get in, it's fine, rather than regretting that you never even made an attempt in the first place. Also, one thing you should be aware of is that getting the scholarships or even going to abroad or US to study specifically give you access to a lot of networking opportunities and even enhanced career prospects. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about funding. So there are different ways you can fund. And I've talked about, self-funding. You have loans. I don't know if you want to do loans. I mean, I would not recommend that. So obviously, financial aids like scholarship, assistantships, or fellowships is like the way to go. So let me explain what financial aid really entails. So when you say you have a scholarship, most times scholarship is from the word scholar, like the scholar part is really emphatic on tuition, right? So any kind of funding that covers your tuition is a scholarship. Now, it might not really cover your living expenses, your stipend, and all those stuff, like but it's just called a scholarship because it's covering your tuition. Now, just that some scholarships can come with extra levels of funding that cannot decide if it is a fellowship or is assistantship. Doesn't that make sense, right? So fellowship and assistantship are scholarships, but the layer they bring to that scholarship is what makes it a fellowship or assistantship. Now, when I say assistantship, for example, is that first your tuition is covered by the school, which is the scholarship. Then the assistantship covers your living expenses, for example, your food, your rent, your insurance, your health and dental insurance and the likes. But in exchange for that funding, you have to do some jobs. Like you have to maybe do a TA, like that's a teaching assistantship, or you do RA assistantship, that's the research assistantship. that is you're working in the lab, or you can do a graduate assistantship where you're like maybe assisting the administrator for something. Maybe you're just helping them for maybe in the something related to administration, but obviously not a teaching assistantship and not a research assistantship. And in some case, you have both of them combined. Like you could have your assistantship consisting of both TA and RA, right? So that's the way you are paying in exchange for your service, right? For the funding, I mean, that's like the exchange exchange of service, right? Then the fellowship comes with no assistantship, right? Fellowship is like we are sponsoring your stipend, we are sponsoring your living expenses, paying your tuition, but you are not mandated to do anything outside what you want to do. Meaning that as a fellowship recipient, you only focus on your research. You don't do TA, you don't do RA. So what I mean by RA is that you're doing a research, but more on what your advisor wants to do. Like your advisor calls the shots. Like you're trying to, it's like a job, a full-time job. But the difference to the difference that fellowship brings is that you can decide the research you want to do that relates to your advisor, and you determine how the pace you want to go. Like there is no pressure that's that you just have to I mean, like there's no like that kind of ROA pressure that student gets, right? Which I mean, I'm other fellowship. I started my PhD with fellowship, and I've been on the fellowship so far. I started with a departmental fellowship, and then I was able to win the NIH fellowship. So I can tell you that fellowship is always a good way. It gives you source life, but with extra requirements in the sense that you would have to do maybe some coursework. For example, in my case, I did a lot of coursework. We do some professional development. I did a lot of professional development trainings, a lot of seminars that because you are not doing TA or RA, so to make up for those time that you're not doing all those extra work, you have to do some extracurricular activities that relate with leadership and professional development, and also take some coursework, right? Yeah, so both of them have like the pro and cons, right? But so far for me, I've been enjoying my fellowship and it's been good, right? So that's that for fellowship or financial aids. Okay, so the different funding opportunities out there in case you're considering them. I made this post earlier this year, January, like SMART goals. So for example, if you're in Nigeria and you're like in the beginning phase, but I'm sure this particular site phases have passed, but just in case maybe you are planning to apply next year, you can begin to consider all these funding opportunities. In the sense that I know that some people, you can be a scholar, you're very, very sound, but let's be honest with yourself, even if you get a fully funded scholarship to study abroad, bro, you don't even have the money for flights. You don't have the money for a lot of things. And it's very expensive, and I can agree with you, so there are some funding opportunities in Africa, or let me say in Nigeria to be precise, that kind of help you in the beginning phase. They don't give you fundings for schools. Like it's not like they don't give you the funding to schools, but they're just helping you in that beginning phase. Like for example, maybe you need to take tests like GRE, GMAT, or TOEFL or LSAT. You can apply to iScholar, which helps in paying off that kind of expenses, and then give you some mentorship, right? Obviously, they don't cover other things. They have like marketable scholarship, which kind of covers the standardized tests as well, and maybe a bit of application fees and some mentorship, right? So those are like two common ones, but like the biggest portion, the biggest portion for funding as far as the preparative phase is concerned, is the Education USA Opportunity Funds Program, especially if you're from countries that have this Education USA package, in the sense that it provides everything you need in the entire preparative phase. Like it assists you with even paying for international passports. So I happen to be an OFP scholar, that's the Education USA OFP scholar. And so I was super lucky in the sense that, they even paid for my international passports. for me to do my international passport. They paid for it. They paid for my flights. They paid for my test, all the tests, the GRE and the likes. Although I didn't later do the GRE. They paid for my flight tickets. Even for some, they even gave me some money to settle into the US. So let's just say I have a free ride. I've been having a free ride so far. So I'm like a Nepo baby. Those are the lighter notes. Okay, and then but by the way, if the only way you can get OFP means that you are from a very poor background, but you are just sound. You have academic talent, but you don't have money to go anywhere. If OFP does not help you, you are going nowhere. So that also means that my background means that I mean, being an OFP shows that I'm smart, but at the same time, I'm from a very poor background, right? Okay, that's on the lighter note. So let's go to the application phase. There are other fellowships that can help you up, funding opportunities like that, that cut across different countries, which I'm sure, you know, the global news have exposed you to in terms of the funding opportunities in UK, Chevney, you know, Commonwealth, Gate Cambridge, MasterCard Foundation, you know, Queen Elizabeth, Commonwealth, and different funding opportunities out there. And then you have the Ireland and Nesta Ferguson Scholarship, which a friend of mine won 2 years ago. And there are different types. There's Erasmus Mundus Joint Master Scholarship. I have friends who are recipients of the Erasmus Mundus, which is a good thing. It helps you like travel between like 3 countries together. For example, it can be like Italy, Spain, and Germany, and then you do your master's program in, you know, it's 18 months. So you do like 6 months in Italy, 6 months in Germany, 6 months in maybe Spain, like which is really cool. Get different experience. And then you have the Knight NSC Scholars Program if you are like the super genius, right? Because it's very competitive at Stanford. So just shoot your shots, don't count yourself out. You know, keep believing in yourself. Okay, so how can you search for opportunities or schools out there, especially when you're concerned with yours? You can use the Study Portals platform. You can use Princeton Review for some school choices. You can use grassschools.com, you know, or you use this US News ranking or Profile Fellow or find a PhD. There are different platforms for finding schools that do the kind of program that you're interested in. Or you could go on this website for some funded project. If you are doing something related to the health sector, you can go to NIH, which is National Institute of Health, and you will see some schools or some programs that, you know, are being funded by the government. In this current in this current climate, NIH might not be good for international folks because NIH now tends to focus more on domestic students, right? I mean, it has been domestic student focused, but they usually have like a few slots for international students, but now it's all domestic. Okay, and then you have fastaid.com, you have PhD stipend to just show you how much like you should expect to spend or which school has the biggest stipend. Again, it's not really about the highest stipend or stipend. Is about the cost of living in that area because obviously the cost of living in New York is much different from if you're living in let me say like which other place, let's say Montana or maybe Kansas or Alabama, and also the cost of living in California is obviously on the higher side as well. Okay, and yeah, so again, there's difference between grad school and you know, undergrad school. So I'm sure some of you have seen some US news ranking. You're feeling like, oh, that school is the best school. No, that school might be the best for undergrad, but might not be the best school for grad school. That's on the one hand. On the other hand is that it might be the best school, but not the best school for your program. So, for example, maybe you're considering like chemical engineering like myself, and you want to apply to, let's say, Harvard, for example. Harvard is a good school, but might not really be the best, one of the really best school for chemical engineering program. I mean, they have a good chemical engineering program anyway, but they're not the top. I'm sure I'll be able to do better than them in my space. So that's one thing I want you to have at the back of your mind. The prestige of the school does not really translate to the graduate school program. It's a different ballgame. And also, the US News ranking does not really do justice, right, to how good a school is. Have it at the back of your mind that almost every school in the US is good enough for your program, right? It's really good. Just that, there's a lot of politics behind this ranking, so don't take it too much to heart. But in case of knowing the schools to apply to, it can be helpful to you to know, okay, these schools are the schools I should apply to. These are my like top schools. These are my safety schools and the likes. So again, can go to just type US News. What I just want to show you is that you can see this all. Okay, let me show my pointer. Okay, so I have my pointer here. You have the graph school. You can see the best engineering school, and then now your program, like in my case, chemical engineering. Or you can just come over here, click on engineering, this, and then you can begin to see different schools. The kind of the cost of enrollment for a master's program or a PhD, and you can see all of that stuff there. You can do a comparison to know the schools to apply to. Okay, that's that. Before I switch the gears, I also want to add that sometimes it's not really about this ranking. It's about the kind of research area you're interested in. So there are some schools that have like, they have a very strong program for those who are maybe seeking a particular research area. Why is this important is that obviously in your SOP, you don't want to be sending, you don't want to be sending the wrong SOP to a school that is not interested in your research area, right? Let's say, for example, you're interested in heterogeneous catalysis, yeah, in catalysis kind of research, which was my part of my undergrad program, and you're trying to apply to MIT, or you're applying to, let's say MIT, for example. MIT does not do any catalysis program. So you are shooting your shots to the wrong school because they are much more bio-focused, even in their chemical engineering program. So you have to do something that relates to that area. So you can see why it's important that you make sure you are sending your SOP to schools that have something to do with the kind of research you're interested in. And also maybe if peradventure you don't get accepted, even if you have a very good profile, it might not really be about your profile, but just be that you're not a good fit for that school because they are not considering the research you said you are very passionate about. And they don't want to take you off your passion. Right? Okay. And by the way, the fact that you did a research in your undergrad does not mean you can't do another research in your PhD. In my case, my research was my undergrad research was on catalysis, but my PhD now is in the biospace gene therapy applications, right? So you can see the very huge, obvious pivot into something different. So you can do that as well. Just have that at the back of your mind. Okay, switching the gears. So if you're applying to grad school, typically you have to plan like a year in advance. Why? So this is like the way the timeline looks like if you are considering the fall semester. But let's say you are not just considering the fall semester. So for example, in the US, most admission cycle is really targeted to fall. But aside the fall, you have the spring semester, you have maybe the summer semester, and some schools will have like winter semester. But mainly like fall and spring, right? But most schools, most programs prefer like fall semester. So the fall starts in August, while the spring starts in, January. So whatever semester you want to start, let's say you're starting with August, right? So count 18 months from August. That's when you should start preparing. Do you get it? Yeah, so typically from June to August is when you do like your search, university search, preparation, begin to prepare your application packets, register for those tests that you want to take. Obviously you should have checked the school's requirements to know if maybe GRE is compulsory for the program you want to do, or maybe GMAT is the one that is compulsory. Whatever it is, have that documented, like have an Excel sheet that documents all this requirement, the professor that you're interested in, the research area that you think you're interested in that school, and maybe the timeline. Also know if maybe there'll be a need to code mail a professor or not. So there are some schools that you don't even need to code mail anybody. Like, the professors will not respond to your messages, not because they are wicked, but because it is not a requirement for admission. In the sense that the grad admission committee are the ones solely controlling the admission process. But there are some schools, like I know of University of Oklahoma, University of Alabama as well, like your chances are higher if you could mail the professors, right? Because the professors are merely the one directing the admission cycle. And again, that's because you are getting acceptance into a lab, or you're getting acceptance into a particular research area, right? Well, there's some programs where you just come, you get accepted to the school, you're accepted to the department, not to your lab. And then when you get to that lab, when you get to the school, you now begin to find the lab you want to join. So yeah, that's a lot of ranting. To summarize, if you are joining a school and you're joining the department directly, there might not be a need to code mail. Just check, you'll see that in their FAQs. That's frequently asked questions. But if, for example, there's some schools that you just go straight to a lab when you're coming in that case, code mailing is very, very important. But regardless, code mailing is always good at any time. Okay. And so definitely you want to do those code mailing in your June or January, anytime, as early as possible. During the summer, especially. Because that's when the professors are a little bit free. Then September to October is when you are submitting those applications, filing and making sure that you have done those tests. And then December, some schools have some extension to December, January. Make sure you have submitted all those admissions. And then around January, February, March, you begin to get some feedbacks. And sometimes there might be need to do some interviews, sometimes you might need to like follow up to know what's happening concerning your application, if you should forget about the application or not. And then typically around April, May, you get admission decisions, right? But some schools, like for example, I got my decision for RPI as early as January. And so yeah, so I got admitted into like 4 schools which were fully funded. Okay, and then what are the basic requirements for grad school? Obviously, a transcript. You should have a transcript in hand, like even if it's not the original copy, like maybe the what's it called, the unofficial copy. And then you can submit the official copy directly to them. So it is called official copy if it is going directly from your school or from a trusted platform to the school you get admitted to, right? And obviously, application fees, which you can always request fee waivers. Then you have your research statement, which is called SOP or PS. You have your CV, your academic CVs precisely. You have your LOR, letter of recommendation, your test scores if necessary. And obviously, you have to fill all this in an application form provided by the school. So these are the common tests that people take: GRE and LSAT. Duolingo is also a good alternative if you don't have money for IELTS or you don't have money for TOEFL. Some schools now take Duolingo. Not even some schools, most schools now take Duolingo, except for some schools. And some schools have even waived it, like they don't need it. Just that maybe they waive it and tell you that when you resume, you'll take like an English communication course in your first semester, right? But if you have maybe Duolingo, they might just waive it for you. I mean, this test might just be what will help you for your assistantship, not necessarily your scholarship, but for the assistantship, because maybe you might have to do TA and they want to be sure that you can communicate well in English if you're doing a TA. But for Ari, not necessarily. Ari will be much more focused on maybe your technical skills, right? Okay, that's it. And then maybe if you are thinking about the finance space, obviously they might ask like GMATs, or if you're in the law space, you have your LSATs. Now let's go over academic CV. So what does this academic CV look like? So this is my CV when I was applying to grad school that time. So I kind of put the three areas I was interested in: catalysis, synthetic biology, and sustainable energy, but all have like some application, right? And I have like a brief statement, like a summary of myself, a solution, blah, 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 developing long-term ways to energy solutions. I'm no longer developing long-term ways to energy solutions, okay? We are researching catalysis and synthetic biology for sustainable energy applications. So just because I knew the schools I was applying to, some schools like have strong foundation in catalysis and some have strong foundation in synthetic biology. Like RPI is more of a synthetic biology kind of school. Or not just synthetic biology, but I mean a lot of other opportunities there. But they don't really do catalysis per se. But the goal is like you can have a particular problem you want to solve, and there are different ways of solving that problem. And you can bring in those different ways as part of your concentration area, right? Instead of being too narrow. For example, let's say you want to solve malaria problem. There are different ways to solve malaria problem, right? It can be from the aspect of applying AI in doing the data analysis towards health sector and the likes. So for example, if you have a computer engineering degree or computer science, you can still do some research in the biospace because you are bringing in your knowledge in computer, or maybe you have some knowledge in machine learning and some molecular dynamic simulation. So what I'm trying to say is that there are different ways of solving a problem that gives you different avenues to pivot. Just to be sure I'm on time. Okay. And then maybe a big highlight of whatever, award you think you want them to see. For example, I was the best qualified student in my department and I wanted them to see that. And I attached my certificate as like a link so they can be sure I'm not bragging aimlessly. Like there's like proof. Also, for Nigerians or for those in Africa, sometimes your academic system is different from the US system. And for example, in my school in Nigeria, the system is based on a 5-point GPA scale. And the US works based on 4-point scale. So how do you do the conversion without doing some credential evaluation, without paying for that? So there are some free platforms for doing your transcripts conversion or credential evaluation without paying money. One is West IGPA. Just go online to West IGPA. Upload your just document all your transcript results. It's not again, it's not like simple mathematics like 4.8 divided by 5 times times 4/4. You don't do that, right? It's not mathematics like that. So it's based on your transcript, and then do the conversion and do a comparison to the US standard, right? And then you have Scholaro and that platform to do the conversion. So it's good to put it there. It put into perspective what your grade is if they were to compare it to the US standard, right? Okay. Then your research experience, if you have some research experience, your undergraduate research, maybe you worked after your undergrad, you can put that. And then maybe you have some publications. I didn't go to a conference, so if you have conference experience, maybe when I mean conference experience, I'm not talking about attending conference. I'm talking about presenting at the conference. Maybe you did a poster presentation at the conference, or you gave an oral presentation. So all those will come in handy. So after like your research experience, you can put your conference, let's say after teaching experience or maybe before publication. If you have some publications, you can put it there. If you have some publications that are under review, you can put under review and you put the journal you submitted it to. If you have some that you are still drafting the manuscript, you can put like manuscript in preparation, right? So this were the publications I had when I was applying to school then. Yeah. They have your teaching experience. Maybe you were just this guy that likes to teach people during your undergrad. You can put that as like peer tutor during your time in the university or stuff like that. Yeah. So it's why teaching experience is that it helps you boost your opportunities for TA assistance. That's the teaching assistantship that I've explained earlier. And maybe your work experience that you feel relate to what you want to do, volunteering experience. Yeah, and volunteer experience can come in handy because typically this kind of school, they like to seek for a well-rounded student, not just a book-focused student, but a student that can, be of great addition to the school in terms of extracurricular, right? Okay. Then you have your leadership experience. If you want to put that again, then obviously you have your professional development and certifications. I would recommend that you make sure that the certifications you are putting are the ones that have some benefits to your program, whether as a chemical engineer, whether as like a student or as as someone who's trying to seek a PhD. I believe when I tell you that I have thousands of, like, I have a lot of certifications, but I didn't put all of them here. I just put the ones that are related to what I was pursuing. So don't just go and gather 2 million certifications and then you have almost 1 page of certifications. If they're not relevant to your research, then dump them. Then skills, you may want to like kind of emphasize the kind of skills you have, not just skills generally, like, segment them into technical skills, research skills, and maybe some soft skills that you've gathered, and then your awards that you've gotten, and then some professional affiliation. Again, there is no a fast and rule or a hard and fast rule for doing this, right? Just do it the way that you feel is good. But the bottom line is that there's a difference between the professional CV, the one you send to your job application, and an academic CV, which is the one you send to a school, right? Because again, they are not. So since we're focusing on US, one thing you must have at the back of your mind is that these people are not cheerful givers. They are not, people that just feel like, oh, Africa, oh, people are suffering in Africa, in Nigeria. So let them come to the US and they will sponsor them. And we just give you money. No, they're not they're not doing charity. It's not a charity business, right? You're coming there to work. You're coming there to work maybe in the lab to push the research frontiers, right? And when you're coming to work, it's like you have to show the skill sets that are necessary for working. So that's why your CV must focus on those kind of skill sets in your certifications, in those awards you are trying to explain. If your award does not have anything to do with academic or something that has to do with, helping maybe in the business space that may play some roles here, don't bring it in. So just have that at the back of your mind that you are trying to see if you are fit for them in their lab or in the school. Rather than, oh, maybe you're just brilliant. So there are two different things, right? It's not just brilliant, it's about can you fit in? And okay, you're wondering how can I optimize my profile? So there are different platforms you can use to optimize your profile by taking some courses on Coursera, like writing the sciences or machine learning specialization. You can also take some writing for research under Research Academy, or build some skill set that will come in handy. For example, MATLAB, Python, data science, AI, nuclear dynamic simulation, and you can apply those skill sets in different research areas. I might be a bit biased because I'm a science person or engineering person. So for those in the finance, it might be those, those ICANN, maybe CFA and all those certifications that you've gotten that might play handy here. Or if you're in the journalism, law space, or health space, it might be all those your community activism that might help you your application. Maybe you're a journalist, you've written for some news outlets. All those things can come in handy academic CV. So this academic CV is looking more like very solid for someone in the sciences. It might not be applicable to to somebody in the art space. So for example, you might not have publications, but you have a lot of news submission that you have done for maybe a news outlet, right? So you can put that in your writing samples. So instead of having like peer-reviewed publication, you can call it writing samples. And you can include the link to as far as you have a link to those stuff, that's what is important, right? So they are not just like, oh, you have publication. No, so don't be afraid of that publication. As far as you have some writing samples that you have done that you feel might be helpful, yeah, just put them there. Okay, that's also for some certification I feel you can quickly get if you're in the science space is that you can get this one from SF Research Academy. You can get this one from INASP. I think they've changed their name. You can also get this fundamental maths preparation from SFR Research Academy. Okay, and I've talked about different writing samples. Maybe you did some book chapters, or you can do some volunteering. I can volunteer for Black in AI. I think they give some scholarships to, not like scholarship, but like application fee waivers to some schools like Princeton and the likes. Or you can join, so if you're interested in US, you can join Education USA, or some other programs like Aspire Leaders program and different, maybe volunteer for UN, all those SDG, there are different goals 1, 2, 3, up to like, is it 17? Yeah. And obviously we want to attend conferences and those things can help your profile. So let's go to CV. I know you've, from what I heard, like, I think you guys have done some essay. You have maybe listened to some talks regarding how to write your SOP. But just to touch a little bit on this is that I have like a five strategy approach. I mean, it can be more than five depending on how broad your research, how broad your experience is. But the bottom line here is that I want you to always try the STAR approach. The STAR approach is situation, task, action, and response. So what's the situation? What's the task? What's the action? And what's the result you got? Or what's the response? Or what's the reward? Right? Again, times have really changed where you just try to tell us a story of, in Africa, in Nigeria, or in Ghana, or in Uganda, poverty, maybe mosquito, malaria everywhere, all those things are not of interest anymore, right? Because they're not admitting you based on empathy, right? They're admitting you based on your skill sets, on how you think, right? So that's one thing you should know at the back of your mind is they're employing you, they're admitting you to come and work on some research as a PhD student, right? So you want to write the situation in a way that shows that you are thinking and you are concerned about this particular research area. So let's say, for example, you're just concerned about green gas emission in the environment. So right, tell us about the fact that green gas emission, GHG has been the leading cause of death in Africa, up to maybe just cite a particular news that says that it's about like 78% of people. And now you don't just want to focus on that situation. You just also want to emphasize the situation by saying that a lot of works have been done in trying to combat that problem. Obviously, you're trying to show that that this is not a new problem. You not just wake up one morning, right? And you saw that this problem exists. The problem has been there. So a lot of people have made effort in solving this problem by using this and that, but this effort are limited in this particular area or this area. And now they're not going to the task. What's the task? The task is that we have to blah, 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 blah. And so what's the action step you have also taken? So I have taken some steps in trying to understand this this concept. And that's why I feel that, doing a PhD in this particular area at your school will give me the skill set I need to be able to combat this problem, right? That's like the results on other stuff. Yeah. So you can see the trend, and you can use that also for all the paragraphs. So what is the antecedent to your interest? So how did you come about this interest? Maybe you came about this interest from your high school. I don't really recommend going as far as high school. But you can just, maybe you got to know this from listening to the news, or maybe reading some news outlet, or maybe taking some courses, or maybe attending some conferences, or maybe attending a class, and then you got to know about these, and you found out that for you to even have a very solid knowledge in this area, you have to take this particular coursework, and you took those courseworks in your undergrad, which has kind of prepared you with the fundamental knowledge you need towards solving this problem, right? So you're trying to channel everything back to your research focus, like showing them the antecedents, right? The things that led to that interest, right? which set the foundation for your academic journey, right? That's what, don't just tell them you took a lot of courses. No, we're not interested in the courses. Obviously, they can see that in your transcripts. So why tell us that you took these courses if you can see your transcript? You're just trying to tell them that these courses have prepared you in this particular area. No, just some limited courses, not all the entire courses you did, right? And then you now talk about your undergraduate thesis. So the mistake people make with talking about the undergraduate thesis is that they just tell us the topic of your undergraduate thesis. Nobody cares. What cares about your research topic? Nobody. I'm telling you, nobody cares. What they care about is what led you to do that thesis. Even if maybe you're in a school that you were just told, this is your advisor for your undergraduate research, this is what you should be doing. You can't say that, right? You have to be like, oh, you're kind of curious on how you can solve this, and then you find out that people have done this approach to solving this problem, and under your advisor, you're able to learn a new approach, or you discover from literature that there's a new approach that could even resolve the problem much better, right? And then you talk about your research. Can I say I've not even mentioned the topic of my undergraduate thesis, right? And then you clearly state what is the novel thing you guys are bringing to the table in this research that you did in your undergrad. Maybe you're trying to do something different, right? And what are the actions you took? Like this, maybe you had to use some techniques, like use some characterization techniques to be able to solve those problems. So you're mentioning your skill sets without doing a laundry list, without giving them a laundry list. You are saying it in a way that shows like a story, like you're weaving the story together. Like, oh, because you want to solve this, you need to do some characterization using this technique, blah, 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 which you learn during the course of this problem. And that helped you to come up with this result that now the impact of your research is that maybe this problem can, the result you got would be of great importance to those working in the rural area who could consider maybe translating their biomass into biofuels, and then, connect the dots by saying that this skill set that you have learned and the skill set that you feel you can translate to your PhD research. You're connecting the dots. Then now your first paragraph can now go further into your research experience after your undergrad experience. Talk about, you can see in this case, I've not mentioned my internship, only mention internships, mention all those stuffs if they are relevant to your research area or relevant to your skill sets. Because all of that are in your transcript, like your CV. So why mention that? So now maybe your research experience, maybe you had some publication that you feel kind of play a role to explain what you're trying to do, and then talk about some skill sets. Maybe because you were trying to understand, maybe you did a review paper, but before you were able to do that review paper, you had to take a lot of trainings on reviews and understand what is happening in that field. Learn from the experts, blah, blah, blah. You took the certification, blah, 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 and, connect everything. And then you're able to gain the knowledge, just make sure you are connecting the dots. Like there's a situation that requires you to do some task, and these are the actions you did, and these are the results that you got that can be translatable to your PhD or to your master's, right? And then you to talk about your alignments with the professors in the schools. More of the reason why I'm interested in this school is that this school have some amazing professors, especially this particular professor who's working in this particular area that you are interested in working with, because you want to solve this why are you interested in this guy? Because you feel the experience you have gathered and the ones he had that the professor has can be of great assets in solving this fundamental problem. You mentioned this particular problem that, trying to show that you understand what is happening in the field. And just in case you don't know too much about the field, what you can do is to read a review paper online, read maybe a recent review paper, maybe 2 to 3 in your area of expertise, and then you will know what is happening in that space. And you will know the kind of skill sets or characterization techniques or whatever techniques that are of importance in that area. And also you can also know what is the current focus or the future focus of that particular research area, which you can weave into your alignment with the professor, because your professor will be like, oh, okay, this guy knows the problem we are trying to solve. We are trying to solve this problem of battery density and other stuff, right? And he's telling me that he has some experience and he knows I have this experience. And if we bring this experience together, we can solve this problem. Does it make sense? Yes, it does. Then the school, the alignment with the school, obviously, when you talk about the fact that maybe the school have some centers, like my school has center for biotech, our centers for future energy systems, centers for material development and material devices, infrastructure and systems. Different centers they have in the schools that kind of resonate with your research area, that you feel that being in this kind of space will give you an opportunity to, to interact with people from different, discipline, and interaction with different discipline has a long term of changing your perspective and towards solving the problem, and even making the problem solution, the problem solving process even much more easier, right? So just mention those things that shows that you have checked the school out, right? And maybe mention some extracurricular activities that the school has. For example, maybe they have like a student association. Like in my school, we have the Black Belt Student Association, and maybe some music association that you're interested in, that you feel you can. I mean, if you're a pianist, like you do music, you can also bring that in, because it requires a lot of concentration to be able to do music. So some of your extracurricular activities play a role here, right? Maybe you have been in campus leadership for a long time, student activities or student government. You can bring that in that area to talk about how you can also help the community grow when you join that school. Okay, so the bottom line here is that please specify your research interest. Don't make it too narrow and don't make it too broad. Read review papers. I said reading at least like 2 review papers will help you. Obviously, you need to write a lot of drafts, SOP drafts, right? And please, I would recommend you use Qbot over ChatGPT. Okay. Again, use Qbot. Qbot is like paraphrasing app. I would not recommend ChatGPT because a lot of schools now are not, they will not use it because it does not sound very real. It sounds very esoteric. Like is that it can overemphasize things that are not necessary, right? And maybe also utilize Grammarly to, especially the premium plan, it can help you. Or you guys can come together, like 5 people come together, put your resources together, and then you can use Grammarly, right? And then seek feedback and reviews. Like I said, this feedback and reviews will help you draft your SOP multiple times. I'm telling you, your first draft is not good. Your first draft, I had about like 7. I kept refining my draft in December, right? And I started refining since July. Okay, so don't self-reject. Apply ambitiously, right? Okay, just to wrap up, I'm almost done. Should have gotten more water. So we have letters of recommendation. So who can write your letter of recommendation? Your professor can write it, preferably professors. Your lab technologists can write it, talk about your lab skills. Maybe your supervisor who you worked with can also write for you, or maybe academic supervisor, even your colleagues, right? But my recommendation is that if you are submitting like 3 recommendations, obviously maybe like 2 from your professors and 1 from maybe your lab technologist or your workplace supervisor, depending on the kind of research area. For example, if you're in the business space, it's not like you're doing lab work. It's all about business. So you want to have your workplace supervisors write 1 for you, then your professor in the school should write 1 for you, and then maybe your colleague, all those stuff. And please do not tell somebody to just write a recommendation letter for you and then you sleep. You will realize that it takes a lot of effort to write a recommendation letter. So help the person in the process by drafting a sample recommendation letter that you want to mention. Obviously, you are not, please take note of my word, you are not writing the recommendation letter for yourself. You are just highlighting some things that you and that person have in common, right? Because obviously the person will not sit down to start thinking of what you have in common. You have to be the one to think of, okay, I think I took this maths class, I did a project with him. These are the skill set I brought. I mentored 5 students in this lab, and then you put all of that together and talk about the research area you're interested in. Then obviously you want to attach your personal statement and the likes, and then you send it to the person. And then the person, sits down, and because you have made the job easier, you can also think further of other things that you have done and come up with that perfect platform. But I can tell you for a fact, which I have seen for myself as an undergrad in Nigeria, I've seen a professor. Obviously, I did not send that professor mine. When I saw the professor do it, like, he was like, Peter, please, can you check my computer? There's this letter of recommendation I sent to. There's this student that's asking you to send letter of recommendation. But I remember I sent one last year from one student. Please just let me pick it up. Do you know what? Just change the name and send it. You don't want that kind of recommendation because it won't get you anywhere far, right? Because it's not specific. It will sound so generic. Schools want specific letter of recommendation, right? And obviously the person is so busy, so you have to help them out in that process. Okay, so your letter of recommendation should reflect your academic performance, your potential in the research field. If you're going for a research, program, if for example PhD or a master's, research masters, obviously if you're doing a thought masters, you don't need that potential in research field per se. Obviously your intellectual capabilities, right? Your personal qualities, which is important. In fact, that is the major thing that the school wants to see from your recommender. Like, yeah, we know the student is smart. We can see it from his GPA or transcript. We know the student is very knowledgeable in terms of the skill set. You can see that in the CV, but we don't know if this person can, work with people in the lab, or if this person will be a thorn in the flesh, right? This is what your recommendation letter would answer to, that you have a very good quality, you can relate with people. So don't just allow the person just say a lot of fine things about you in terms of your scholarly abilities without mentioning the personal qualities you bring to the table. And obviously your achievements, your extracurricular activities. And yeah, okay. Yeah, and so I've come to the end of my talk. Sorry for taking much more time, although I still have some time for questions. But these are the resources I've used. You have the Peterson 6-volume guide to grad school. We have graduate admission essays by Donald Asher. I think that copy need a revised edition. Okay, you have a field guide to grad school. I have that copy here with me. It will help you. This book will help you when you start your program, you start your PhD, your master's. So even if you don't read it now, you can read it later. It will help you later in future. And then there are some resources like this, and then some mentors that have trained me throughout the entire process, especially from Education USA and from Unibain. That's from my BVL lab. Again, let me emphasize that it is not, as far as PhD is concerned, let me be biased. As far as PhD is concerned, it is not about the school you go to. It's about who you're working with, right? For example, if you are in my research area, you want to do your PhD in RPI and work with my advisor, because my advisor happens to be the leading expert in that field. So if you are interested in a particular research area, look for the leading expert in that field and the schools where those leading experts are, right? So that's very important as far as PhD is concerned, because that's what matters, right? Which school did you know, which advisor did you work with? That's what they will ask you at the end. Not really about the school you finished from. But for a master's program and for a bachelor's, obviously the school you finish from is very important. So thank you for listening to me rant from morning to night or to this moment. I hope you have learned, even though it's just a little thing, I hope I've not, said so many nonsense. Okay. And thank you. And this is myself. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just send me a LinkedIn invite. Just search Peter Ifolu. You can shoot me an email, or you can follow me on Instagram to send me a message. That's it. Thank you. I can take questions.
Wow, that's fantastic. Please, can we all just say thank you, Chief Therapist, Scholar, Mentor, Legend, Biochemical Engineering, Peter. It's great to have you on the call.
Thanks a lot, Matos.
Excel sends his regards. Excel says I should greet his chief. So
Mr. Excel, I greet you.
all right, I'll give him your greetings as well. So guys,
Yeah.
let's take this chance to ask Mr. Peter questions that we need him to answer. For everyone who has been here so far. All right. So I will just take a couple of questions. Quickly raise your hand. You have a burning question you need to ask Mr. Peter. So quickly use the raise hand icon so I can call you so you can speak. Raise an icon. All right, we have the first person. We have Sonny Okonkwo. Now you have the floor. You're going to be able to unmute yourself now. Now you can unmute.
All right, good evening, everyone. Sorry,